right, breaking news this morning. President Trump arriving in Saudi Arabia.
Trump just landed in Saudi Arabia, again. But this time, it wasn't about tradition. It was about power. Behind the smiles and fireworks was a $600 billion partnership deal in defense, AI, and tech infrastructure. The Saudi playbook is clear. Buy the world's most powerful people. And Trump? He may be their biggest investment yet. From luxury golf deals to shadowy political payoffs, this is how Saudi Arabia is buying billionaires and reshaping the West. Part of that deal includes massive partnerships with American companies building AI infrastructure, including chipmakers like NVIDIA and AMD. These aren't speculative moonshots. These are high-level collaborations to build the digital backbone of the future. Data centers, compute clusters, and next-gen surveillance systems, all on Saudi soil. It's not just about technology, it's about dependency. If the West relies on Saudi infrastructure for AI, defense, or cloud computing, then Saudi Arabia doesn't just influence politics, it controls the platforms those politics play out on. And they're not doing it alone. Elon Musk, Sam Altman, and other Silicon Valley titans have already appeared alongside Saudi leaders in Riyadh. So have BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, and global VC firms. These aren't one-time deals, they're long-term alignments. Donald Trump didn't just shake hands with the Saudi royal family, he embraced them. Back in 2017, his first international trip as president wasn't to Canada, or the UK, or even a NATO summit. It was to Riyadh. Trump gave a speech surrounded by gold, swords, and royalty. Lavish state dinners, fireworks, $110 billion in arms deals. It was the start of something big. The Saudis didn't just welcome him, they celebrated him. King Salman personally draped the kingdom's highest civilian honor around Trump's neck, a moment beamed across the world. Traditional sword dances were performed just for the American entourage. The whole thing looked more like a coronation than diplomacy. And now, it's bigger than ever. In 2025, Trump returned to Saudi Arabia. This time he wasn't just a guest, he was a power broker. The kingdom rolled out the red carpet again, but this time it wasn't about symbolism, it was about strategy. A staggering $600 billion in new investment deals were signed, targeting everything from artificial intelligence to defense infrastructure. That visit wasn't a coincidence, it was the payoff. Because over the past decade, Trump has built something rare. A long-term, personal alliance with one of the most powerful and secretive regimes on Earth. From policy favors to post-presidency profits, Saudi Arabia's investment in Trump wasn't just political, it was personal, and it's still unfolding. We'll get into the deeper deals shortly, the private equity payoffs, the golf tournaments, and the AI influence you've never heard about. But to understand where this is going, you have to understand where it began. Donald Trump's presidency ended in 2021, but the Saudi relationship didn't. If anything, it became more profitable than ever. The most glaring example? Jared Kushner's $2 billion payday. In 2021, just 6 months after leaving the White House, Kushner launched a private equity firm called Affinity Partners. He had zero background in managing large investment portfolios, no history of successful asset management. But one major investor didn't seem to mind. The Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, controlled directly by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, handed Kushner's firm a $2 billion investment. Not a proposal, not a gradual buy-in, a full upfront $2 billion. Even more jaw-dropping? The deal went through despite internal objections. A panel of financial experts advising the fund reportedly warned against the investment, citing Kushner's lack of experience, high management fees, risky and unclear strategy. But the Crown Prince overruled them. Why? One could argue it was just a bet on a well-connected American with regional experience. Others saw something else, a reward, a thank you note written in billions. While still in office, Kushner had defended MBS publicly and privately, most notably after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post journalist who was assassinated inside a Saudi consulate in 2018. U.S. intelligence later concluded that MBS ordered the killing. But the Trump administration refused to impose serious consequences. And now, post-presidency, the cash was flowing. But Kushner wasn't alone. Donald Trump himself was also benefiting from the kingdom's riches, this time through golf. The Saudi-backed LIV Golf League turned the traditional world of professional golf upside down. With a seemingly endless budget, LIV began luring away top PGA players with multi-million-dollar signing bonuses and promises of fewer tournaments and more cash. And where did they play some of their marquee events? Trump-owned golf courses, Bedminster, Doral, National Golf Club in D.C. In one stroke, Trump made millions leasing out his properties while cozying up to LIV's deep-pocketed backers. And it wasn't just about prestige or revenue. It was pure Trump. Transactional, unapologetic, and profitable. The question many people asked was simple. Was this a coincidence or a payoff? Still, no laws were broken. No charges were filed. Just two incredibly well-connected Americans, Trump and Kushner, enjoying the benefits of a foreign partnership they spent 4 years carefully building. Saudi Arabia isn't just buying allies. It's buying assets across every level of Western power. When the kingdom invests, it doesn't always look like influence. It looks like real estate. It looks like defense contracts. It looks like AI. In recent years, Saudi Arabia has poured billions into elite U.S. institutions through donations, sovereign wealth investments, and sweetheart business deals. They've quietly bought influence through Ivy League universities, tech startups, think tanks, media firms, and even Hollywood studios. But now, the game is evolving. The kingdom's latest move? A $600 billion package of investment commitments announced during Trump's 2025 visit, aimed at transforming Saudi Arabia into a global tech and defense superpower. It's a quiet takeover, but it's working. The kingdom doesn't need to control elections. It doesn't need to own governments. All it needs is access to the algorithms, the capital, the narratives. And we can debate on whether or not they are getting all three. But those are key components in this game. If you control the data, the infrastructure, and the minds shaping public opinion, you don't need to win a war. You just need to buy the battlefield. And it makes you wonder, if they've already bought the systems, the startups, and the servers, what or who comes next? For decades, oil has been Saudi Arabia's ultimate weapon. But what makes it so powerful isn't just how much they have, it's how strategically they use it. In 1973, the kingdom led an oil embargo against the US and its allies, sparking a global crisis and sending gas prices skyrocketing. That moment changed the world's understanding of Saudi leverage. Since then, nearly every American president, Republican or Democrat, has treaded carefully when dealing with Riyadh. Oil is more than energy, it's leverage, and the Saudis know how to use it. At the core of this arrangement is the petrodollar system. Since the Nixon era, Saudi Arabia has agreed to sell oil exclusively in US dollars. In return, the US provides military protection and economic cooperation. This deal strengthens the dollar globally and ensures Saudi Arabia remains tied to the American financial system. It's a quiet agreement, but it has enormous implications. When oil prices rise, the US turns to the Saudis to increase production. When global markets shake, the kingdom can calm or exacerbate the chaos with a single policy change. It's a unique form of control, and it keeps Washington listening. But with power comes pressure. And nowhere was that clearer than in the case of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. In October 2018, Khashoggi, a US resident and writer for the Washington Post, walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul and never came out. Turkish intelligence released audio. Reports of torture, murder, and a cover-up spread rapidly. And behind it all signs pointed to one man. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The CIA concluded that MBS had ordered the hit. The world responded with outrage. European countries suspended arms sales. Business leaders pulled out of Saudi investment summits. Even the Trump administration's own intelligence agencies raised red flags. But Donald Trump? He stood by the kingdom. He dismissed calls for sanctions. He repeated Saudi denials. And he emphasized one thing above all: business. They spend $450 billion in our country, Trump said. That's a tremendous order for our companies. Later, Joe Biden would promise to do things differently. As a candidate, he vowed to make Saudi Arabia a pariah state. But once in office, global realities kicked in. With inflation rising and oil prices surging in 2022, Biden made a controversial visit to Riyadh. The image of him fist-bumping MBS, a man he once pledged to isolate, was a stark symbol of political compromise. Critics from all sides saw it as a retreat. Others called it a necessary evil. And while governments argued over morals and optics, Saudi Arabia launched an international PR blitz. They funded investment conferences, brought in Western influencers, and promoted Vision 2030, a sweeping reform plan aimed at rebranding the kingdom as modern, open, and business-friendly. It's not just a rebrand, it's damage control on a global scale. And it's working. Because when oil flows and money talks, even the world's most powerful nations tend to listen. The Trump-Saudi alliance, transactional or treasonous? There's a fine line between business and betrayal, and Donald Trump has spent years walking that tightrope. To his supporters, Trump's dealings with Saudi Arabia were just good business. He struck enormous arms deals, helped American defense contractors thrive, and kept gas prices relatively low during key stretches of his presidency. He didn't waste time on diplomatic pageantry or moral lectures. He made deals, and he made them fast. But critics saw something very different. They saw a U.S. president whose personal wealth and business empire had long-standing ties to the very regime he was now praising on the world stage. And then came the deals. During his term, Trump personally signed off on what you could potentially call controversial was an $8 billion arms deal by declaring a national emergency that allowed him to bypass Congress. At the same time, his family business was hosting Saudi royalty at Trump properties. Events were held. Hotel suites were booked. One report noted that a single visit from Saudi lobbyists to the Trump International Hotel in Washington spent $270,000 on rooms and amenities in the span of just a few months. Then there was the real estate history. Back in the early 2000s, Trump openly bragged that he made millions selling apartments to Saudis. "They buy apartments from me," he said. "They spend $40 to $50 million. Am I supposed to dislike them?" The quote was a joke, but it wasn't wrong. By the time he became president, Trump's business empire had become a patchwork of global entanglements, many of which involved foreign governments or sovereign wealth funds. Saudi Arabia was just one of many, but it was arguably the most consistent and rewarding. Within months, the Saudi-backed LIV Golf League began hosting tournaments at Trump resorts. Jared Kushner's $2 billion investment followed shortly after. Was any of it illegal? No. Was any of it normal? That may depend on your definition of normal and what you believe in. You be the judge. Who's next? Donald Trump may have been the test case, but he's far from the endgame. Saudi Arabia isn't looking to make headlines. They're looking to make connections, quietly, permanently, globally. Tech billionaires are already at the table. Elon Musk, Sam Altman. Venture capital firms and AI startups. Saudi officials aren't just writing checks, they're building pipelines. The next breakthrough in artificial intelligence might come with Saudi fingerprints all over it. Meanwhile, former politicians and cabinet members are sliding into lucrative consulting roles with Saudi-backed firms. Former diplomats, military officials, even media executives. People who once shaped American policy now shape Saudi perception, and that's the real play. Not to own the message, but to own the messengers. If you control the people with the power to influence millions, You don't need to dominate governments. You just need to be in the right rooms, at the right parties, with the right bank accounts. So who's next? Look around. They might already be bought. Donald Trump danced with Saudi royalty. Jared Kushner walked away with $2 billion. And the kingdom? It didn't just get access. It got something far more valuable: loyalty. But Trump was never the real prize. Because this isn't about politics. It's about power. Not the kind on paper, the kind behind the scenes. Saudi Arabia isn't buying land. It's buying people, billionaires, politicians, gatekeepers, the ones who shape what the world believes. This is the new playbook. Control the influencers, and you control the outcome, quietly, permanently. And as with all stories involving power, money, and geopolitics, what we hear might only be part of the truth. The rest? The media may not even be allowed to tell it. And if that's what they've already done, what happens when they decide who's next? Thanks for watching. If this video pulled back the curtain for you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's richest and most controversial power players. We're just getting started.